Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 4 of Grounded Intuition. We're going to be working with Rachel Pollack's frameworks for lines in tarot from her book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom today. And so we'll be guided through that. And this is going to be a quick and dirty introduction to tarot's major arcana through the lens of power for the most part, but also just in terms of traditional meanings, where you may find them, what the goals of those cards are, and so how you might respond when they come up in your reading. So, let me move myself over. Okay, here we go. So, the opening trumps of tarot include the Fool, the Magician, and the High Priestess, and that's it. These trumps allow us to understand the roots of the story that we see in tarot and the figures that shape society before the solidification of the hierarchy that we see get going throughout tarot. And what I mean by that is that, at least in terms of my own theory, tarot, especially the beginning of tarot, shows us what life and spirituality was like before Christian supremacy, but it also shows us what it looks like after Christian supremacy, right? So the earliest trumps in the sequence are also ones that show us, for instance, the power of queer people, women in spiritual life, which is normal for pre-Christian societies, but less common after Christian supremacy and Christian colonialism. So we're going to operate in that understanding throughout these 4 parts today. So, of course, we have to start with Tarot's Fool. And so the Fool can be a card that comes at the beginning of this series, or it can become at the come at the end. For the purposes of this, I'll discuss both, but we are going to treat the Fool as a beginning here. So you may be experiencing feelings of reckless abandon, glad tidings, right? So when you're feeling optimistic, excited to start something new, self trust, which can also be baseless faith, belief in divine providence, right? So the Fool is one of the cards we see when we're least at risk of burnout because we're operating with our own logic. I wouldn't say that we're necessarily operating intuitively, because I think that there's a difference between intuition and instinct. And the Fool is following their own instincts, which I think are actually much older and incorporate, it's like a intuition incorporates instinct, but it doesn't stop at instinct, right? So the Fool is operating on instinct with the assumption that their animal instinct will get them into trouble sometimes, but also get them out of trouble as many times at least. They're willing to take risks, and they show a lot of bravery and courage. The Fool is one of our classically queer androgynous cards. In traditional meanings, it was associated with specifically with bisexual people, and also androgynous people. So that's something to know. The Fool's goals, in terms of beginnings, are to free yourself from paradigms that no longer serve you, right? You want to express your individuality. You want to feel what it's like to really be free, starting fresh, but also to like just be able to follow your own internal voice. And so when those manifest as endings, or the endings that the Fool brings into our lives, often have to do with a belief in one's own rectitude, right? So one of the things I always say about the Fool is this is also, as much as it's a card of like somebody who comes out and they're unafraid, this is also the card of the parent that leaves the family and doesn't provide any kind of support because they're just following their own goals and really trying to stand up for their own happiness. Um, and so there's a level of reckless abandon here too. Baseless faith, it's still just as risky and courageous, but is it necessarily in the right direction? Not always. And I think that that can also be true for the Fool reversed as well. So for the Magician, all 3 of the opening trumps, I will say, are traditionally considered queer cards, right? So the Fool, as I said before, generally is associated with bisexuality and androgyny, and trans people more generally, although they're trans people throughout tarot. Whereas the Magician is generally associated with gay people, particularly gay men, but not just gay men, of course. This is another Hermes card, right? We do see all of the symbols of Hermes, by which they talk to humans. That's our minor arcana suits as well. And so the keywords of the Magician are alchemy, mastery, right? Because they're able to combine all of these forces, communication and initiative, in addition to transformation, right? So this card, I would say, is definitely one that comes up in our work life when we are being looked at to solve problems. Right. But I think that one of the things that the magician has that many other cards do not have is that the magician is supported by their own practice, right? So their practice is self-renewing. So when there's too much fire, right, they have water right there. When there's too much water, they have earth, right? So there really is a sense of balance. And this also is an intuition. It's not just intuition for intuition's sake, like we talked about with the Queen of Cups. This really is intuition put into practice. This is magic put into practice. There is a blending of the worldly and the practical being put into motion by this one card, right? It starts things, it takes the initiative to transform their own life. And, a lot of times when we see a magician, we need to work on our own or we need to be the one to propose a new project. Because when we have that level of power or control in our work life and in our, over our productivity, right? It helps us from being burdened by other people's expectations. The goals of the magician are to carve out a path using natural skill and also learned skill. So, right. So, whatever was in us when we were made and like our things that we just pick up easily, and then also things that we've honed over time. And also to combine multiple energies towards a single goal, right? So, that's the magic of it. And also to make the outer universe vibe with, sync up with the internal universe as well. So for the high priestess, they are here to steward us through our psychic development, often with others, right? They're here to facilitate a spiritual connection and bring deep change. They're also a card of mystery and stillness, right? So when we are healing from burnout, out of these three cards, the high priestess is probably the best one for us to call on because the high priestess is willing to sit in silence, right? Willing to be witness to one's own internal processes in a way that the fool and the magician are simply not, right? And they're also here to pass on wisdom, and that wisdom is often mysterious and esoteric in nature. So even like taking a course like this, it is very high priestess. It's also hierophant for sure, but um thinking about how we pass on wisdom to ourselves, right? Not even just from a teacher, but like how we react to wisdom. Are we comfortable with silence, right? One of the things that one of the times I see the high priestess the most is like, first of all, when the outcome just can't be known yet. If this is uncomfortable for people who are learning tarot or who work with tarot regularly, but there are times when you just can't know something, right? Not everything is meant to be known by humans. Some things will overwhelm you. Some things might even derail you. So the high priestess often comes up and tells you to mind your business. But it also says wait and look and see. Don't make any decisions right now. And that can be really uncomfortable, particularly when people are coming in about purpose, work, things like that, right? Because it really says, well, you're going to have to wait and see, like the work is not done, the result isn't ready yet. And so, in terms of the goals of the high priestess, right, is to reveal and also conceal, right? To keep things safe through silence, through privacy, to internally know what cannot externally be known, to protect, especially psychically, and also to blend knowing and action, right? And that action might be subtle. So you may know, and so you may avoid someone, right? Or avoid a task. You may know something about the way you've been working in the past. Like you might be like, if I keep on picking up these boxes like this, I'm gonna put my back out, right? I'm gonna put my back out. So maybe then you're just like, well, I won't do this. And a lot of times, this sort of action is harder to realize. It's a kind of action that may not be visible to others, like internal work, shadow work for sure is definitely the work of the high priestess. Anything you can't see, or can't see with your external physical eyes. So that's our opening trumps. Those are our opening trumps. And I will see you in the next video to talk about the first line, the